the biggest sleeper that you have on your 53-man roster right now, or at least to have a strong opportunity heading into the final 2 preseason games that you believe could make this final team that you maybe didn't see making the final team back in early July when we got here?
Yeah, I'm going with Kenny Robinson, safety. I was really impressed with him early on. He did tail off a little bit, I think, towards the end of training camp, but I'm still a believer. I love his size. I love his skills. I love his attitude.
Yeah.
Just he's a physical guy. He loves to compete and loves to fight, talk a little trash. I like all of that. I think that's all important for a defensive back. I still think he does need a big play or two in these final 2 preseason games, but and part of it was just a matter of the situation, but he was running with ones, and I thought he looked pretty good when he was running with the ones. He looked capable.
Yeah.
It's an uphill battle, but I also don't think guys like Miles Killebrew have really wowed anyone during training camp. So yeah, he still needs those couple big plays, but they're there for him to make, and he'll have plenty of opportunities over these final 2 preseason games to really prove himself.
Yeah, I like Kenny Robinson. I like your point about Miles Killebrew. Hasn't really wowed. He's looked rough out there defensively. It's just a matter of, and this is a question for you. It's just a matter of, can you overcome the special teams?
Right.
Can Kenny Robinson earn a roster spot, even if Miles Killebrew is a guy who could be viewed as a special teams captain, even if he can't do necessarily anything on defense? You think that's a real possibility?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I think Killebrew would have to start to look a lot rougher. And I think
Yeah.
Robinson would have to really impress defensively, because I don't really have a good read on how great of a special teamer Robinson is. My instincts say, yeah, he can definitely play special teams and he'll be just fine. But when you think about kind of the value that Miles Killebrew brings at that position, it's going to be tough to overcome. That's why he's kind of, I guess, a sleeper, a guy who I think right now is still on the outside looking in. It'll be tough, and it's just that's where when we think about this 53-man roster, it all comes down to the margins. That's the real meat of this roster has already been set. It was set a long time ago, but guys are really going to have to make their final cases on the margins. So, if I was a betting man, I don't know if I'd put money on it, but I think Kenny Robinson is certainly capable of doing that, kind of leapfrogging Miles Killebrew.
Yeah, I think it's definitely capable. I think all it takes is, you could put up a good special teams play or 2 in the preseason and then end it all. At that point, it's just like, okay, here you go.
Oh, the lights went off,
Is.
but I don't know. It seemed
the ghost of St. Vincent College turned them back on.
Is.
Gotta love it. I'm gonna miss that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna miss the lights going off mid conversation.
Yeah.
I think that you're right that Kenny is just a play or 2 away from making this team. I don't think Miles has it locked in by no means, just like you said, but I also don't think that the hump to get over to Miles is super significant, because I think Kenny is a guy who, I think safeties can show you, hey, I can play special teams because I play defense. So the transition isn't as difficult as a guy. Right. I'm going to bring up who my selection is, Dez Fitzpatrick, wide receiver. I think right now, I don't want to say he holds an upper hand over Miles Boykin, but I think that if I had to take 6 wide receivers, and I'm gonna, this is all based off of the Steelers taking 6 wide receivers, which if they take 5, this argument goes out the door, because I think Gunnar Olszewski leads both of them. But I'm going Deontay, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Allen Robinson, Gunnar, and then I think Dez Fitzpatrick as my 6th, just because he looks better. He's had a much better training camp, in my opinion, has been consistent. There have been times where Miles Killebrew's had a bad play. There have not been those times where I've noticed with Dez Fitzpatrick. I don't know if he's going to get the opportunities to kind of earn his place here, but I think during training camp, he showed enough that in these last 2 preseason games, he's got to be on somebody's radar. You know what I mean? No coaches are standing around going, Dez hasn't done anything. I think consistently, and even during the spring when we were at minicamp, he was making plays there too. I just think that he's a guy to watch. I think he's snuck up on a lot of people's lists, and he does. He's got to show his special teams capabilities in the last 2 games, but I think that he had a pretty good special teams run in the preseason opener, and if he could do it again, he's a guy to watch for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Miles is a great special teamer. That's, I think, why I like him a lot to make the 53-man, but I also think at the same time, this is this reads like a lot of the same situation that we were just talking about between Kenny and Miles, but it's a little different too. I think Miles is definitely more replaceable on special teams. Like he's good at what he does, but what he does is, he's a great gunner. And I feel like you
Yeah.
can find that in a bunch of different places. And if Dez even shows, I don't think that the leap that Dez would have to take from to kind of match or come close to matching what Miles does on special teams is as large as what we just talked about with Kenny trying to reach what Miles does from a special teams standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think, like, don't get me wrong, I think Miles Boykin was the team's best special teamer last year, but I think it's easier to replace a gunner than it is a special teams captain, a guy who, calls your plays for punts, a guy who today threw a pass to
Yeah,
Miles Boykin, which I guess, that didn't help
that's
either
that
of our
puts us in a
arguments.
pickle. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a Miles Killebrew to Miles Boykin fake punt pass, which I guess is not the best situation for our predictions, but still, I just think that it's harder to replace that guy than it is Miles Boykin. And I just think Dez is young enough, he's made enough plays that you feel okay about him. I think the biggest question when it comes to these two is who do you feel you could kind of sneak onto the practice squad, and who do
yeah,
you if you feel that Dez Fitzpatrick's a guy that isn't going to get picked up, which maybe if I had to guess he's not,
yeah,
then you just kind of feel comfortable like sliding him on because it just at that point it really does come down to special teams. Who's the better special teamer? And chances are it's going to be Miles Boykin. Chances are it's going to be harder to sneak Miles Boykin onto your practice squad. If you believe Dez could, you kind of make that move there, which I don't think works in Dez's favor. But with 2 games left, 2 preseason games left, I think that he could make some noise
yeah,
and hopefully find a spot because I think that I don't like to see guys like that or like Kenny Robinson who you could just say, oh, well, the veteran in front of them would be harder to get onto the practice squad, so we'll keep that guy. It's like that doesn't,
yeah.
I don't like to bring the politics into who makes the 53-man roster, and that happens more times than not. And with these guys, I just think that gives some young guys some opportunities when they're deserved because the Pittsburgh Steelers love to say, we don't care how we got here or we don't care how you got here. Sometimes they don't live up to those
Yeah.
remarks, and I would like to see that follow suit with these two.